my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jessie. We are here to talk about plants as always, and today specifically we are going to be talking about how not to kill your plant. So there are a lot of videos on YouTube that kind of go really in depth about, different lighting requirements that you might have in your house, different watering needs that your plants have, humidity levels, things like that. This is not going to be that video. So this video today, I just want to talk about the most basic ways to keep your plants alive. So I'm just going to be sharing with you some tips that I kind of wish that I knew as I started getting into learning about plants, because I killed a lot of my plants before I really kind of got the hang of how to just keep them alive on a basic level. Of course, as I grew a more deeper understanding of different plants and their needs, I was able to kind of take these tips and adjust them and kind of deepen upon them. So, I kind of delved deeper into humidity, grow lights, things like that. But those aren't things that I really started to explore until I really understood the basics of understanding how to keep plants alive. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. If that is of any interest to you, then just keep on watching. So the number one thing I want to talk about today is going to be lighting. Now, I don't want to touch on this very long just because there are so many different lighting needs that different plants need. And essentially, I could spend it like an hour-long video talking about different lighting needs that plants have. Each plant is so unique and so different that it does kind of become a little bit challenging. So if you're interested in more specific plant care lighting needs, like you have a specific plant that you want to know about, let me know and I can do like a more in-depth video about specific plants. But again, today, this video is just gonna be kind of a well-rounded video about how to basically keep your plants alive. So the number one thing that you need to know about lighting is basically about windows. So just having an understanding of a north window is gonna give your plants pretty much the least amount of light. And a south window is going to give your plants the most amount of light. So if you kind of have that in the back of your head, then you'll be able to move forward a little bit. I just figured out what my windows were using the compass on my iPhone. I just literally turned around and found out that way what kind of windows I have in my apartment. I would definitely recommend doing that before you bring a plant home. Just keep in mind that north is going to give you the most diffused light and south is going to give you the brightest, most like tropical light through those windows. Then you'll kind of be able to better understand where your plants go. Something to keep in mind is if you end up putting a plant right next to a windowsill, it's really important that you monitor that guy, because maybe that plant is going to love it there. Maybe it's a succulent. It likes a lot of light. It wants to be in the heat. And that's great. But even for succulents and things like that, you still want to monitor them, because if a plant is pretty much in direct light, the water will evaporate quicker. It will need to be watered more likely. It could get leaf burn from the sun. The leaves could start to turn brown and crispy. So just things like that, you want to just keep an eye on your plants and just make sure that they're getting the right amount of light and adjust as necessary. That's going to kind of bring me into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is just basically interacting with your plants. So for me, I interact with my plants on a daily basis. And what I mean by that is, no, I don't like go around my house and talk to my plants. Like I think some people have like an idea that plant people do in their head. I definitely don't do that, but I do look at all of my plants every single day. Whether that's me sticking my finger in to check if they need water, just looking at the leaves, see if there's any pests on there, seeing if the leaves have any burn, anything like that. So every single day, I am looking at all of my plants. I'm not spending, several minutes inspecting each one, but I do kind of just look at them and just kind of see if there's anything that I maybe need to adjust, need to change. And I think one of the best ways to really get to know your plants is to kind of check back in with them every single day, just to see how are they reacting to my environment. Does it feel like, do their leaves feel squishy? Does it feel like they need more water than I'm giving them? Personally, for me, I do move my plants around a lot. I definitely keep my plants kind of in their own little basic area where once I bring them home, I'll kind of decide where I think they're going to go and then I'll put them there. But I definitely wait to see if they acclimate there. If they start to show signs that maybe they're browning, maybe their color is fading because they're not getting enough light, whatever it may be, I'm going to move it. So I have no problem moving my plants around, and I'm not going to just let a plant sit and suffer if I really see that it's not doing well. So that is a really important thing to keep in mind, is maybe the first spot that you chose for your plant, the plant looks beautiful there, it's like aesthetic, the decor is right, whatever. But if it's not the right conditions for your plant, then you're gonna have to just move it and just kind of be okay with that. So with that said, despite the fact that I interact with my plants all day long, I definitely really recommend a hands-off approach to your plants. So what I mean by that is sometimes we have a tendency to kind of smother our plants. So especially for me, when I first got a bunch of my plants home with me, all I wanted to do was love them, give them water, touch them, repot them. I wanted to just give them all of my love all at once, and I wanted to see them thrive, obviously. But sometimes that's really just not the best way to go about it. So although I check in with my plants every single day, I definitely don't water them every single day. And I definitely don't, move them around every single day. I will move them if I feel like they're needing different lighting conditions, or maybe I'm redecorating a little bit. But otherwise, I pretty much just keep my plants in like the same kind of area that they're in if they seem to be thriving and doing well. Because if they're showing you that they're giving me new growth, their coloring is great, there's no burnt tips, they seem to be doing well, I'm gonna leave them. I'm not gonna do anything because I don't wanna kind of disrupt that flow. They come home and they really just need to get used to your space, they need to get used to their surroundings, and you kind of have to give them the space to do that. And if you don't give them the space to do that, they might really get overwhelmed and they might just kind of crap out on you. So I really recommend kind of taking a little bit more of a hands-off approach. Having too much of a hands-on approach can kind of lead to things like shock if you repot too soon, or overwatering, things like that, where you think you're doing such a good thing for your plant, but in reality, you're really harming the plant. So let's talk about repotting first, and we're gonna end with watering, because I definitely think that watering is the one that really gets people the most tripped up. So we're gonna talk. So if there was one thing that I could say that I made the mistake of over and over and over again before I really learned, was to not repot my plants. So that was a huge thing that I wanted to do pretty much immediately. Once I started getting into my plant journey, if you will, I kind of started ordering plants online, or I would buy them at my local nurseries and I would bring them home, and they'd be in these like ugly plastic nursery pots, and all I wanted to do was get them in some nice terracotta so I could get that like aesthetic going. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about plants. I was like, I'm not gonna overwater, I'm gonna put them in terracotta because that's gonna wick the moisture away, and I thought I was so smart. The truth is, you really should not be repotting your plants right away. There are very few exceptions where I would say it's okay to repot your plants. First exception where I would say it's okay to go ahead and repot your plants as soon as you get them home is if you get your plant home and you notice that at the bottom of the nursery pot, your roots are sticking out the bottom. And in some cases, they might even be trying to like wrap around the bottom of the pot because it's so root bound. So in that case, your plant probably needs a new pot. Those roots are trying to breathe, they're trying to escape the pot that it's in. So in that case, it's give that guy a new pot, and that's fine. The second exception where it's okay to repot your plants as soon as you get them home is if you get your plant home and you immediately notice that it's very, very, very wet on the inside of the pot, and you notice that over a couple of days, it doesn't go away. Nurseries aren't necessarily perfect, especially like big box stores. Occasionally you'll run into this problem where they'll have a plant kind of potted in a planter that maybe isn't the best. Maybe it's ceramic and it doesn't have a drainage hole, something like that. And in that case, you don't want your plants to be really sitting in moisture. So if you notice that your plant is super wet and it just doesn't seem to be drying at all, I might go ahead and kind of get the roots out of there because I really would want to avoid root rot. So I might put it in another pot. But otherwise, pretty much I would say 95% of the plants that I bring home or even get shipped in that I order online, I leave them in their nursery pots for as long as I can. I would definitely say that usually leaving your plants in their nursery pots for probably a full growing season is usually a good rule of thumb. So if you have plants in your home that have been in their nursery pots for maybe a full year or a full growing season, and you do notice that the roots really are starting to get like kind of root bound and they're wrapping around there, then you can go ahead and repot them. Otherwise, I would just say bring your plant home in its nursery pot and find a cute cache pot to put them in. If you're unfamiliar, a cache pot is like one of these guys where it's a pot that usually doesn't have a drainage hole. and it's kind of just used so the nursery pot can go in it. And just sit on the inside. This is my silver satin pothos. I do have another one in my room, but this guy's just been sitting in this nursery pot like this, but just placed inside the cache pot. So I still get the aesthetic of the pot that I want, but you know, I don't have to go in and disturb him because I don't want to send the plant into shock by doing that. Or even times where I get a plant home and I want the aesthetic of like the terracotta. I think maybe the terracotta will look really good against the leaves of the pot, and I'll just put the nursery pot in terracotta. So for example, this guy is my Hoya right here. I just brought her home recently. She's either a Hoya Crimson Princess or a Hoya Crimson Queen. I don't know, I can't remember. But essentially, if you know anything about Hoyas, white variegation here can either be on the outside of the leaves or on the inside of the leaves, and that determines whether it's called the Queen or the Princess. I honestly don't remember, but I do want to just show you this as an example. I love this terracotta here. I love the way that the pot is kind of shaped. And I also have the plant hanging, so I think the terracotta kind of looks really nice hanging from the ceiling. So what I did was I just got her home like a week or so ago, and I just took the nursery pot and put her right inside the terracotta. So that way, I think she still looks really cute. She fits really nicely, but I don't have to go in and disturb her roots. I can just kind of let her be in her nursery pot. So I would really say that there are very, very, very few exceptions where you want to bring a plant home and immediately repot. And if you're asking yourself, if you're trying to justify why it needs a repot, just really double back and ask yourself, is it important? Like, does this plant really need to be out of this nursery pot right this second? The answer is usually no. And your plants will really love you a lot more for that if they just stay where they are and are able to get acclimated into your space. Like I said, plants can go into shock. They are living things. They don't have consciousness or brains, but they are living things and they do respond to their environment. So if you go in and disturb them, they can go into shock and they can die on you. And I will say I've killed many plants in the beginning of my plant journey just by wanting to get them into a beautiful aesthetic pot without really thinking about the consequences of it. So don't repot unless you absolutely have. And finally, the last thing that we have to talk about today is watering. Because more often than not, the reason that people kill their houseplants is under or over watering. I would say usually the spectrum kind of goes to over watering. So I think a lot more people end up killing their plants due to over watering than they do due to under watering. But you never know. It can kind of go both ways. So I do want to talk today about how do you know when it's the right time to give your plant some water. So I have a couple of plants next to me that I'm going to be showing you kind of what they look like and how I know that they need water. And then I'm also going to show you how I water them. So let's start with my Marble Queen Pothos. You guys have seen this in a couple of my videos. I think my lazy plant video, I had this guy in particular in my video. This is a Marble Queen Pothos. She normally is very beautiful, very lush, and very full. She does actually have a yellow leaf, but I'll get that right off there. But you will notice right now, she looks very sad. She looks very floppy. If I touch her leaves, normally they feel very crisp and waxy, almost like I could like crack it if I pushed it, if I squeezed them too hard. But right now, her leaves are droopy, they're very floppy, and she just looks honestly like a sad mess. So I would normally let my plant kind of get to almost this, I would kind of almost let her get to be like this before I would go ahead and give any plant water. One of my favorite things about plants is that they communicate with you. When a plant needs water, more often than not, you will know. You will be able to look at the plant and acknowledge that, okay, something's going on here and it's probably time to water. And you can double check that by just taking your finger, sticking it in the bottom first inch or 2 inches of the pot and seeing if, does it feel moist? Does it feel damp at all just within that soil? And if it does, do not water it. Don't water it. If it feels the least bit moist, don't water it. Plant roots don't want to be drowning and they don't want to be swimming. They need water to survive, but if you kind of think of it as though your plant was a human, you would not like it to just be guzzling water 24/7. It would make your stomach hurt, it would make you feel very great, and it would kind of make you feel bloated. And the same thing goes for plants. You don't want to just keep giving them water. And I know that kind of we have this idea or this mentality that if I'm watering my plant, I'm loving it, I'm taking care of it, and I'm giving it what it needs. But that's really not necessarily the case. So I always let my plants fully dry out before I water them, unless I have a plant that I know specifically needs water. But really the only plant that I can necessarily think of right now that I have in my home that I would water even if the soil is a little bit damp would be my peace lily and my Calathea white fusion. So those are two plants that really like to just have moist soil all the time. But that's something I knew before I bought the plant. And usually it'll say like on the little plant tag, likes a lot of moisture. But more often than not, any plant that you buy and you look on the tag, it's gonna say water when dry. You only water your plant when it's dry. You don't need to water your plant if it still looks like there's just a little moisture in the soil looks dark, the soil is not pulling away from the sides. As you can see here, you can see how the soil is literally just pulling away from the sides because it's so dried up. If you're not seeing any of those telltale signs, that it's not time to water. Don't overwater your plants. It is the #1 cause of people killing their houseplants, and it's so sad. I will be showing you my method of watering in just a few minutes, but I do want to talk about like scheduling watering. There are some successful plant people out there that have a watering schedule. And by that, I just mean like maybe they water their plants every Saturday or maybe every Sunday or whatever it is, or maybe it's like every 5 days or so. They just kind of go on a schedule and they just water their plants whenever. I really wouldn't recommend that at all. And I don't do it that way at all. So this kind of circles back to the interacting with my plants. Every single day I check in with my plants. Some of my plants live on a windowsill and I know that they're gonna need water every day or so. And that's just kind of the case, you know, especially with smaller pots that have less soil in it. Less soil just means less surface area to hold on to water. So if I know that I have a plant that's kind of in the window where it's getting a lot of sunlight, maybe it's close to a grow light, I know that it's gonna need water every couple of days. So I'm gonna check in with it. But again, I'm not gonna water it if it feels like it's still a little wet. I'm just gonna check in and see where it's at. And that would be my recommendation for you is maybe you don't check in with your plants every single day and that's fine, but check in every couple of days with all of your plants and just see what the deal is. Stick your finger in the soil. Does it feel wet? Does it feel damp? Does it feel moist in any way? If it does, don't water it. Just wait a couple of days. I really think that you can just run into issues when you just get yourself on like a blind schedule, because all plants are so different and have such different needs that I think the best way to really get a feel for your plants is to interact with them, try and figure out their individual needs, because just be much more successful that way. If there's anything that I can leave you with, it's don't overwater. Don't water until... Just don't water your plants until the soil is dry. I beg you, please don't do it. The last thing I'm gonna do before I conclude this video is show you how I do go about watering my plants. You're gonna notice in the next couple of clips that I drench my soil. That may seem very counterproductive to what I've been telling you. But the thing is, if you've done it right and you've completely and successfully let your plant dry completely up, then at that point, your plant's gonna be parched. She's gonna be ready for a drink. So at that point, you can really drench the soil all the way through. Let the water fall down the bottom of the drainage holes. It's gonna drench your plants and let the plants drain through so that all the water comes all the way down and then it comes back out. So any extra that the plant doesn't need, it's just gonna get rid of. The main reason that you really wanna drench all the way is because when you wanna encourage root growth, which any healthy plant has healthy roots, so encouraging root growth means getting water all the way to the bottom of the pot so that the roots continue to grow downward rather than just kind of staying stagnant somewhere in the middle of the soil. So it is important to really give your plants a thorough drenching, but only when they're ready for it. So let's go ahead and I'll show you kind of how I water my plants. All right. that when I put the plants down, I left them in the bottom of my bathtub. And I usually just kind of leave them there for like an hour or so just to let any of the water drain through. So it doesn't make a mess when I either hang them back up or put them where they go back on the shelf and it doesn't drip water everywhere. A lot of things, different things that I could talk about today. I could talk about fertilizer. I could talk about grow lights. I could talk about pest management. There's a lot that kind of goes into really keeping plants happy and healthy. And especially if you have more rare plants in your homes, those things are important. But for today, I really just wanted to focus on like the most basic tips that I wish that I would have known when I first started getting into plants, because it would have saved me a lot of plant deaths. So if you have any questions about what I did today, if you have any questions about plants in general or anything else, just go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I will have another video coming later this week. On that note, I'm just gonna go ahead and sign off. I hope that you are staying safe. I hope that you're staying healthy. I know that it is a very scary time. And also to my people of color that are watching, I just want to say that I see you and I support you, and I would never want to speak for you, but just know that I am here with you. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.